We apologize for starting the public hearing a little late. We had urgent matters to discuss in executive session. The first item on the agenda is the public hearing on district and building level safety plans. There is 30 minutes allotted for that. Even though we started late and people want to talk for the 30 minutes, it's available. All right? First of all, we have some information from Mr. Lokema.
Good evening, Mr. Carrion, members of the board.
Good evening.
To start off the public hearing on school safety plans, I'm just going to read the prepared statement. The district-wide building and safety plans, building level safety plans have been made available for public comment on the district's website and in board docs. Comments from school personnel, parents, students, and other interested parties must be submitted within the next 30 days. An email has been created for the submission of public comments on the district-wide school safety plan and building level emergency response plans as follows: plans@wcsdny.org. That is also published on our website. It's as well as a link to the email for the plan. The building level emergency response plans are confidential under New York State law and are not subject to disclosure under the Freedom of Information law. A summary for each building level emergency response plan has been made available for public view on our district homepage. And I can describe that this year's school safety plans are different from previous years in that our district partnered with local law enforcement and the New York State Schools Department to assist in the creation and implementation of a new statewide template for school safety plans. And so I'm proud and happy to say that our building administrators and school safety teams worked very hard on creating our new building level safety plans that adhere to this new template. And details on that are described in the summary documents for each school. So at this time, if there are any questions, and then otherwise I will turn it back over to President John.
Thank you. People may make comments. It works the same way as our other public comment sessions. Total of 30 minutes will be allotted. So at this time, it's just on the public safety plan. We'll have another time after that in which you can speak on other items on the agenda. The maximum time allowed for any one speaker is 3 minutes. Persons who wish to participate in the public comment portion of the meeting, in this case just on the building safety, on the district safety plans, must state their name and limit their comments to the issue at hand. Thank you. Would anyone like to speak on it? Please come forward to the microphones.
Ed Sloshow, Town of East Fishkill. Good evening, Superintendent, board members, community members. I'll be somewhat brief. Just a couple of real quick comments. On page 12 of the presentation package, the elected officials that are listed are incorrect, and that needs to be changed and updated. Senator Gibson is now Senator Serino. I don't know who Mark Waller is, if that's supposed to be Kieran Michael Waller. That information should be updated. So just something that I noticed when I went through it. One of the other items is the fact that, once again, I realize that the board must notify the public within 72 hours of a public hearing. But once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a bit amiss as to the timing of this and the fact that this notification went out late on Thursday. Hanukkah has just ended for many community members. People are out holiday shopping. How can people read this information, digest this information, put together comments, and appear tonight before you with limited notification? This wasn't even posted in the Poughkeepsie Journal that I saw, in the Southern Dutchess News. It's not even on our district Facebook page. It's posted on the district website. To think that members of the community every day go to the homepage on the district website, I'm sorry. Okay, one of your board goals was better communication to the public. I don't see this as better communication to the public. This is something that we have to seriously consider and implement and discuss. But once again, it seems like we're trying to just shove this in without any proper timing for the community to really review this information. It's a holiday weekend. It's not any proper notification. Is this information that has to be voted on time sensitive or not? I don't know. I just don't think enough time is given. With that said, I have just one more quick comment. On the page 7, under early detection of potential violent behavior, we have, beginning with the 15-16 school year, all greeters will be requiring visitors to scan their driver's license into a visitor management system. I know Mr. Lokema is working diligently to have this implemented in all the schools, but is it yet and working in every single school? Are we still beta testing this? I'm just curious about that. Also, we stated here that this information, once it is scanned in, it is being put up against the National Sex Offender Database. Obviously, that's an important thing, but shouldn't that have been sent out and communicated with the public as to what the system is going to be used for? Obviously, there's some privacy issues. Obviously, we want to make sure that those individuals are, revealed during the scanning process, but we need to have some proper communication with the public. What is the system? What is the system about? This information is going to be collected. It's a type of data collection. It needs to be conveyed. Again, we're throwing this in here in some documents, and nobody knows truly what's going on. I realize we have 30 days. We have a website. We're going to ask for more comments from the public. But unfortunately, it's the holidays. There's nobody here. The community, in all honesty, a small percentage know that this is even going on. And this can't continue. We have to improve our communication and work together. I mean, you do this with every type of meeting, and I don't understand that. I wish you would reconsider this when you're putting together public hearings, to give the community enough time, okay, to get information, to review it, and to make their comments to you properly. Please consider this moving forward. Thank you.
For the information of anyone who would just like to make their comment to the website, there are 30 days in which to make comments. So anybody whom you know of who was not able to come here because of a holiday or because of other reasons or just didn't know about it, they do have 30 days, and this is just for those who wish to come and speak now. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at this time? All right. Hearing none, we will move on. I guess we'll have a motion to close the... Okay, Mr. Rubin, second. Mrs. Pelton, all in favor? Unanimous. Okay. The next item on the agenda is public comments on agenda items. I won't go through the whole directions again, but basically it's the same thing, 3-minute limit, and you need to stick to issues appropriate for public discussion. Compliments or complaints about student discipline, specific student issues, or personnel must not be addressed during public comment. You can always come up to us afterwards and speak individually to administrators or board members, and any other questions that you have can be submitted in writing to Mrs. Pedro, our district clerk, and they'll be put on the website with the answers. Thank you. Anyone who has other comments on the agenda items?
Ed Sloshow, East Fishkill again, thank you. Agenda item 6.02. I had anticipated this report to come back close to $100 million. So the $87 million estimate does not catch me by any surprise. This may be a little premature, but the following needs to be addressed. Is the board planning a referendum for voter approval this coming May 2016? I ask this because the New York State Department of Education is so far backed up on their approval process, the size of this plan will take a long time. Can we afford to wait since we have 8 schools and 2 facility buildings with an unsatisfactory rating? What are the safety risk factors, to our children and district employees? Are we in violation of any state education requirements? How does the board plan on paying the debt service on the bond needed to do these capital improvements? I ask this because we have yet to bond our current capital improvement project, and we do not know how we will pay this as of yet, since we still continue to carry rental fees. I'll have more comments on that a little bit later. Agenda item 7.04. Is it the board's intention to offer early retirement to teachers in an effort to reduce staff and costs through attrition? Can you explain your reasons behind this agreement? Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Okay. Seeing none, we have a motion to close that. Mr. Lumia, second. Dr. Risby? We don't need to. All right, fine. Thank you very much. Just the hearing. Okay. All right, comments and communications received by the Board of Education. Dr. Risby.
Good evening, everyone. I attended the parents' workshop at Van Wyck School. It was very informative and well organized. Many important areas were covered, especially Common Core, Learning Standard, Math and ELA, drug awareness, college prep, and more. Last year, I initiated the conversation of having a parents' workshop related to Common Core Learning Standard implementation issues. And we as a board members collectively acted on this. We were able to pass a resolution of having a grade-specific parents' education night, provide a platform for district teachers to communicate regarding effective curriculum, and we are glad to see this happen. As a parent and board member, I would like to thank our attendant, Mr. Carry-On, Mr. Dukinma, Mr. Richard Zip, and all the teachers and coordinator, Dr. Cardwell and Amy, for the great job on parents' workshop. I also attended the PTSA meeting at John Jay. Assistant Principal Mr. Albanese and Mr. Kezwala were there. Mr. Albanese talked about student safety and intervention in case of emergency. I was very impressed with Mr. Kezwala's idea of introducing PBIS postcard. It's a brilliant idea. In the meeting, mostly suggested for the parents' workshop to be on weekdays so more parents can attend. They also asked if it can be done according to grade level, meaning elementary, middle, or high school level. I want to thank the PTSA President Priscilla and her team for doing a great job. Last week, Mr. Lumia, Mr. Rubin, and I attended the meeting with Education Commissioner Mary Ellen Elliott. I asked 3 questions. One was, is the SAT going to be the Common Core based? She said so many changes are happening, it's too early to say anything, but it is aligned. The other question was about heroin and marijuana use in high school. How much focus do we have on these rising issues? What intervention we are planning to put in place? Her answer was to contact Department of Health to get information on this. The third question, which we didn't have time to ask her, so I gave her in writing the question. Recently, Commissioner said about the SLO, which is the Student Learning Objectives, maybe the focus of how can we get data on how students were doing in a particular grade level with a particular teacher. What are the steps we are taking to implement this? Overall meeting was okay. 1 hour was not enough to cover, but she tried her best. Thank you.
Mr. Lumia?
First of all, I'd like to have a moment of silence for all those whose life was prematurely taken in Sandy Hook Elementary School, and one of our former RCK student, Vincent Lynch, who recently passed away. Last week, Dr. Rizvi, Mr. Rubin, and I went to a meeting with Commissioner Ilya. She was an educator for over 20 years, and she knows what it means to be in a classroom. In her presentation, she stated that 35% of the students graduated from high school have to take remedial courses when they enter college. There was no question that something had to change. Since she was appointed as commissioner, she's traveled over 17,000 miles and has heard many individuals with many different opinions. In addition, since she has been in charge, she ordered a survey regarding the Common Core Learning Standards. Approximately 10,500 teachers and 250,000 non-teachers responded. Out of all those respondents, 72% had expressed a positive feedback to the Common Core Learning Standards, but that's not the case as it pertains to the standardized test in the BPR. In fact, she stated that many individuals who are very vocal against the Common Core Learning Standards have very little knowledge of the many standards. She stated that the implementation of the regional reform agenda was poorly done. Because of the poor implementation, the teachers were not prepared for the changes. Textbooks aligned with the standards were non-existent. This created an obvious backlash and a very negative perception of some regarding the standards. In addition, very little was done to educate the parents who could have played a more positive role. Since most elementary school teachers are excellent generalists and not content specialists, which is essential to teach the Common Core standards, more should have been done to help the teacher's preparation. She stated that the creation of modules should not have been used as scripts. What will be some of the recommendations? To remediate some of the problems, more teachers' portals are being created so they could be provided with helpful teaching aids. Those portals can also be accessed by parents. She stated that she would recommend that more local control be given to how to teach the curriculum. Since the question asked in tests have been an issue, there will be better teacher involvement in any of these new development tests. She stated that 6% of the given tests will be put out and the teachers will have access to the student results. She will recommend that the exam should be shortened and the students with an IEP will be given better accommodations. In fact, she stated that districts should find ways for students who do not have an IEP to have their exam prolonged. Some were able to ask one question. Although I was not able to convey what I had written, I gave a copy of what I had written and provided a copy to the board. Hopefully she reads it and responds to the 4 recommendations I made. I did agree with her that a committee of those we paid to educate and have been certified to teach in New York State to educate our students must be formed to specifically assess whether the standards are age appropriate and whether it would create better critical and analytical thinkers. Mr. Rubin submitted 2 letters he received from the community, and Dr. Rizvi asked a couple of questions, submitted another. The commissioner stated that she has listened to parents, educators, and will in the near future make all recommendations which hopefully enhance the education of our students. That was a report that I submitted to the board, and I was asked to give. And on December 5th, Mr. Rubin, Dr. Rizvi, and I, as Dr. Rizvi already stated, attended the Wabash Central Portal Workshop.
3 different cars, though, John.
Was that?
We didn't go as a team, 3 different cars.
Okay. Whatever. I wish more parents could have been present to see exactly what teachers are doing to better educate our students. The turnout, in my opinion, was very poor. I listened to 2 of the sessions offered, one by Mrs. Melissa Salvatore and the other by Mr. Michael Clark, both of whom act as staff developers and content specialists for our teachers in mathematics and ELA. Because most elementary school teachers are excellent generalists, there's a very important need for the need of content specialists. Ms. Salvatore gave a partial presentation on the K-5 learning standards. If any of you decided to come to our next presentation, you will see that students are not only learning the math algorithms, but I taught 2 manipulatives to get an understanding of those algorithms. I asked Ms. Melissa Salvatore to put some of the demonstrations on the district website, or the district pages to say, for parents to see and hopefully appreciate the beauty of how to use manipulatives to make the children understand algorithms. Mr. Clark is the ELA mentor. I cannot possibly do justice to his presentation as to our students are given ways to analyze passages. Through his presentation, parents could understand at what level their child is, and we're given aids as to how to help their child get to a higher level. Mr. Clark is a full-time mentor. I hope that in the next budget, the superintendent puts Mrs. Cantator, it also becomes a full-time member, a full-time, actually, mentor. There's no better way to help children than to participate in the next presentation. I hope that prior to the next session, we do a better job advertising sending a letter home, inform both the Sun-Dutchess News and the Poughkeepsie Journal so that more parents can participate. I think it was an excellent presentation, and I wish there was more time allotted to those particular presentations. I enjoyed it, and as a math teacher, I enjoyed Mrs. Salvatore's presentation immensely, and of course, Mr. Clark, I can't say enough about it. As I said, I hope Mrs. Salvatore becomes a full-time as opposed to a part-time mentor. Thank you. She is for something? I thought you said she was part-time. Well, my mistake.
You approved her.
I approved her. Thank you. I'm glad I did, because she did an excellent job. That's it. That's all my comments.
Mrs. Laval?
This week, the federal government reauthorized the Elementary and Secondary Education Act by passing and signing into law the Every Student Succeeds Act. The 1,060-page document was released on November 30th, passed overwhelmingly in the House of Representatives on Wednesday, December 2nd. 3 days later, it passed the Senate a week after that, and the next day was signed into law by the President. I'd like to say that I'm excited that these changes were made, but the fact of the matter is, in my strong opinion, based on what I've read in regards to the actual legislation and perspectives from people across the country, the worst parts of the legislation remain intact. Ultimately, the approval of any standards still rest at the federal level. Schools will still be evaluated based on state tests. The tests will still be administered every year for 3 through 8. The data will still be collected. So as excited as people are that this was a bipartisan, overwhelmingly approved piece of legislation, the fact that 1,060 pages was passed and signed into law in essentially 10 days, it's not very encouraging at all to me. In any event, in addition to the federal changes, New York State, as was mentioned, has been discussing the changes and the concerns that people have been expressing. I learned a new word this week. It's closure. And it's a motion or process in parliamentary procedure aimed at bringing debate to a quick end. And it comes from the French word guillotine. We need to stop guillotining these discussions, because as a district, we chose to go full speed ahead when these regulations came into place, and now it's being discussed and allegedly overhauled at the federal level, allegedly, revisited at the state level, and as a district, as a huge district, we need to consider the fact that there are a lot of concerns with this program, and we need to be willing to discuss it here at the local level as well, and at the very least, remain cognizant of the fact that the program is in flux at every level of government, at every level of the education system, and it behooves us as a board, as a local district, as a very large local district, to remain aware of the fact that there are a lot of challenges, a lot of concerns, and we should be discussing them and anticipating them, and being better prepared as a district for the potential changes that might come into play.
Mrs. Pelton, Mrs. Gavan, Mrs. Cardinal? Mr. Rubin.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, I had the opportunity to also attend that parents' workshop series at the Van Wyck Junior High School, and I won't go into any detail. That it was just excellent at every single level, including, by the way, the food that was there for us. But I wish more parents were there, and I wish more board members were there. One of the things that I will say that surprised me at that was that I heard parents, and I've seen these parents before, these are active, involved parents. I'm not saying others are not, but these people are actively involved in their kids' education. I had heard the comments that we are not giving enough homework to the children, that we are not challenging them enough. And I was surprised to hear that, but I was just listening, and if this is what the community wants, it's good that we should listen to these types of things and just take that into account when the curriculum is being implemented. Attending the meeting with Commissioner Elia, with my comrades there, it was a wonderful experience. We did have 1 hour to sit basically and listen to her. It was very limited. It was attended by, our session was attended, I would say, by about 130 or 140 people there. Commissioner Elia is a well-spoken woman. She is an educator, as she told us, by her trade. Many years, probably 25 or 30 years, right, John? And she speaks very well. I'm a little bit more tepid than my colleagues that I'd like to say that what she spoke, she talked a good talk, but the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and I give her, let's have a honeymoon period and let's see what happens there. Now, I'd also like to say that I am very proud that thanks to Mr. Stella and Dr. Bach, historic bust of the RCK Indian has been located. I've been looking for this for about a year, maybe a little longer, as well as a totem pole has been found after 1 year of searching. And I really think I was very impressed that they were able to find it after this time, and I'm sure it'll be put to good use. I think I'd like to also thank Dr. Shukat. This was just on a different issue, but he was going through his school and found some very important, very old handwritten documents that are pertinent to the history of the area, and he will talk more about that at his pleasure, probably not tonight, I don't think. But I was very impressed. I did happen to see some of those things, and they are very old. I also had attended with a number of my colleagues, Mr. Lumia, Ms. Kellen, the ceremony this past Sunday for the flag donation to the district at the walkway over the Hudson. That, as always, is very impressive. We're going to have one last one next month. I attended Capital Improvement Committee, Dutchess County BOCES meetings, Audit Committee meeting, PTA Council holiday dinner. That was just a nice little get-together with everybody. RCK's Prism concert and the Windsor concert, Wappingers Junior High School winter concert. And I would like to just say, when I see these children there, the ones who participated so far, and I'm sure in all the upcoming ones, in all these concerts, these children seem to have not suffered from the education that they get, but they have benefit. These are strong, outgoing individual children, and I am proud to say that they are part of our district. Thank you.
Well, I think everything I did has been pretty well covered. I also attended audit, capital improvement, and policy committee meetings. Mrs. Laval was also at the audit committee meeting, as was Mr. Sloshower and Mr. Soma. And at the capital improvement meeting, Mr. Lumia and Mr. Rubin and myself. And did I miss anybody? And the policy committee meeting, Mrs. Pelton and Dr. Risby and myself. The PTA council dinner that Mr. Rubin and I attended was very nice, and it's always good to see the wonderful work the PTA does for our children. And it was a pleasure to be out there Sunday in the wind, but fortunately fairly warm, on the middle of the walkway over the Hudson for the flag ceremony. So thank you very much. And before we close board comments, I'd like to wish all of you, our students, our staff, our parents, and our entire community a very pleasant holiday. The superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Board of Education. First, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank and commend our students who are here today for their class. And I know that they must fulfill their requirement in order to pass their class. But I'm still very happy to see you here. And I also walked over to Mr. Katzlauer and Ms. King to let them know that some of your classmates have snuck out already. They may be from RCK, but only because she couldn't recognize a couple of their faces. So I just want to take this opportunity to let you know that I'm really pleased to see you here, and your senior year should be your unforgettable year. Just do it responsibly, do it safe, and have yourself a great time. Thanks again for being here. With that said, everything that was covered by the Board of Education members, I'm not going to reiterate, but participated in many of those events. What I'd like to share is that as far as our strategic plan, we will start tomorrow with our new project leader, Mr. Lokima, who will be facilitating tomorrow and Wednesday our core planning team. One of the things that we will discuss and we will share with the core planning team that we are right on schedule with the public relations committee with their recommendations for a new website. This transition will be happening during the winter break. I don't want to get too much into this conversation because we also have our administrator, our coordinator for public relations and evaluations, along with Mr. Lokima, who will present part of my report at this point. So, Ms. Watkins, you can come to the mic and finish off my report.
Thank you. So just a little recap, I'd like to thank students both from RCK and John Jay for their assistance, and the leadership of Jeff Butler and Bob Wood for assisting us. They've done a fabulous job. What they have done is Jeff and Bob and I met to discuss the recommendations that were provided through the Public Relations Committee, took those recommendations. They brought that back to their classes, and it worked in conjunction with what their curriculum was, except for its real, authentic, real-world experiences for them. So they, in Jeff's class, what they did is research not just local area websites, but across the country and across the state, just to get some other ideas of what were effective strategies that districts were using, and came up with some suggestions, which ironically nearly mirrored the suggestions that the Public Relations Committee came up with. And just to summarize a few, looking at the number of buckets or channels across the top to trim that, making sure our events were visible rather than low on the website, and looking at how the headline information is presented so that it's easy to read and has some consistency in it. In addition to that, both schools were looking at various logo designs and working on the graphic arts piece of what would represent Wappingers Falls. So that's still in the design process. We have some rough ideas from both schools, so we're going through those and they're refining those and reviewing back some of that for us to review. Basically, they also reviewed some templates from our current website, so we wouldn't have major upheaval with what parents are familiar with or what teachers are already doing, but it's allowing us to present the information, the content in a more user-friendly format. So it's staying with the same company, and they narrowed down to 3 top templates for us in how that information looks and is available to the public. And then we'll be presenting that tomorrow with some feedback as well from the strategic planning team. And then narrowing that down. And our hope is, again, to have that repurposed for us during the December break when parents aren't actively looking for information, but when they come back in January, we'll have that available for them.
Thank you. Thank you
very much. And as Ms. Watkins indicated, we're excited about the core planning team. Mr. Lumen, you'll be there tomorrow, and I believe Mr. Rubin. Yes, so we're excited about having the 2 of you attend the core planning team, along with community members and staff members that are part of the strategic planning. Before just one last mention, we had the conversation about making sure that we highlight what students are doing in our schools, district-wide, but we want to do it where the students come themselves. I do remember last year we had a student from Dr. Panzer's class from Royce Ketchum High School who provided us with a small presentation about her trip to Africa. Dr. Cardwell and I have been speaking. Just last week, our students from Royce Ketchum High School and John Jay High School participated in Model United Nations, Model UN as they call it, where it took place at Marist College. We are in the works of bringing some of those students in January to provide you with a very short presentation of their experience at Model UN that took place at Marist College. Wanted to share that information with you as well. And we will continue to highlight our students from here to the remainder of the school year. Thank you, and to everyone who's already begun celebrating your holiday, as well as for those of you who will be celebrating your holidays, have a very great holiday. Thanks.
The first presentation tonight is on the Smart School Bonds Act.
I'm not slouching, okay?
That's okay. But you see, Mrs. Powers, nice.
Sorry about that.
I think you can sleep behind you. That's
Good
what
evening
it's-
again. I'd like to talk to you briefly about our Smart Schools Bond Act. The Smart Schools Bond Act, if you recall, was a referendum passed by the voters in the general election in November of 2014. It allocated $2 billion to state schools for the implementation of security improvements, instructional technology, classroom space, and the like. And Wappingers got a portion of that funding, which we are going to talk about, the spending of those funds. Right. So the purpose of the Smart Schools Bond Act had four components to it, four categories. The first category was providing for high-speed internet bandwidth, or bandwidth in general, to our schools. There was actually a standard at the state level that says every student should have 100 megs of available bandwidth per pupil. That's been a number that has been in dispute, but I can say, at least from the status of our district, we have a robust network that can provide a significant amount of bandwidth for each student based on need. We have a contract that allows us to ramp up the level in which we need to provide based on demand. So right now we have adequate supply above our demand. If we need more, we have a contract through Dutchess County BOCES that allows us to increase without having to buy any hardware or anything. We just call them and say we need a little bit more. So because our hardware in place is very robust on a fiber network. Category 2 is to acquire learning technology, instructional technology in the classroom. It could be computers, it could be interactive whiteboards, laptops, any kind of instructional hardware, document cameras, and the like. Construct or enhance modernized educational facilities, both to make ready for pre-K programs in the district, as well as to eliminate modular or temporary classroom space. I should say occupied modular classroom space. And to install high-tech security features in our schools, most of which are ones that we've taken part in already as part of our capital project from 2013. So under the four categories for spending, the district it was allocated $5,327,266. The the prerequisite for spending this money is that we had to assemble a Smart Schools Bond Act committee, which I'm glad to say that we have, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, which includes all of our stakeholders. There are the different spending categories where we have 4 different categories. We can choose to apply $5 million all to one thing, one category, or spread it out equally amongst all 4. It doesn't really matter. There's no minimum dollar amount per category. We must include the private parochial schools in our plan for spending at a rate of $250 per pupil. This is based on their actual attendance. So we have 5 private parochial schools that qualify inside of our boundary. I'll show you those allocations shortly, but it includes all the students, not just Wappinger students, everyone that they have enrolled in their school in the 2014-15 school year. The Smart Schools Bond Act says that we must submit an implementation plan to the state. The implementation plan must first receive a preliminary review by the Board of Education, after which time it must go to the out for public comment. We'll make it available on our website. We will advertise it to our family members and community members as best we can, and we will let them know that their information is out there. For 30 days of public comment, come back then for a public hearing, as well as final approval of our Smart Schools Bond Act implementation plan. The good news is that there is absolutely no time constraint on spending these funds. We can submit, and which is what we're proposing tonight, submit partial implementation plans, because there's a lot of conversation amongst the committee on how to spend $5 million. There's a lot of conversation amongst central office staff on how to spend $5 million and what is applicable to the projects that we have ahead of us and some of the goals that we wish to achieve with the money. And what's really nice is that we can submit multiple plans. So tonight is implementation plan number 1. A couple of the bullets up there worth mentioning that if this is a project that would entail a capital improvement in addition to a classroom, let's say, then all of the prerequisites under a capital project must be upheld. You must have your SECRA process completed. You must work with the architects, submit official designs, have all of the surveys and whatnot done. And what's unique, though, to it is if you're able to afford the entire project using the Smart Schools Bond Act money, you don't actually have to seek voter approval to spend those funds for as if you would if you were doing a capital project where you're looking to take a bond out for money. And this is an expense reimbursement-driven program. So everything that we put out as part of our implementation plan, once approved by the state, once the plan is approved, we can go and purchase the equipment. We can go out and sure the capital project piece, if we're building something, would be a little bit more of a drawn-out process. Go through the process of funding the project, and then within 90 days of getting invoiced, we will get the reimbursement back from the state. And Kristen is well versed in answering any questions you might have about that funding process. So our Smart Schools Bond Act Committee was created in late 2014-15. We surveyed all of our teachers and parents and community members, and we had a really nice mix of folks who are willing to volunteer their time. We have 19 initial members, and that we've already had 3 meetings to date. The first one happened in June, where we went over the implementation guidance document for the program. Again, in July, sort of a stopgap to see where we're at. We didn't have all the information at that time in terms of what the state application process would look like. We have some committee members here. We have Mr. Slowshower and we have Ms. Crandall as members of the committee here with us today. We met in December 1st to talk about this initial plan and spending a portion of these funds. Once we learned what the actual implementation process looked like, and we knew that we could do it in pieces, we knew that we wanted to move forward on things that the committee had consensus on. I'm going to describe to you what those pieces make it or include. So the plan must include consultation with parents, teachers, students, community members, and other stakeholders. We'll be working on the students piece and community members over the next 30 days. The district developed school board preliminary, I went through this in terms of, this is our preliminary plan that we're sending to you for review. We're going to be taking any community questions to the same address that we noted for our school safety plans, which is plans@wcsdny.org. And we'll be looking to submit a final plan for you in January. Component number one of there's two pieces of our initial plan, implementation plan. The first one that we're going to submit to you. One of the issues that we wanted to address as a committee was the lack of equitable access to technology in all of our classrooms, namely interactive devices at the front of the room. We surveyed all of our schools in May of last year and found we had 141 classrooms at the time that lacked a whiteboard or a blackboard. And every year we are being asked, please, oh please, can I have one for my classroom? I really need it. And we're looking to make sure that as a committee, we agreed that we should provide equitable access to this technology in every classroom. And we are budgeting $900,000 to make this happen. This would be for the classrooms that do not have the technology currently, as well as ones that have broken or non-working technology in their classrooms. Watch Junior being one of them. It's one of the first schools to ever receive smart boards back in 2002, 2003. A lot of them are antiquated and non-functioning, so we'll be looking to repair some of those. We're estimating, and it's just a budgetary estimate, of $4,500 per classroom. That's installed. We're going to have folks come and actually do the installation. I admit that budget number is high, but it's for planning purposes. This is what we'll be looking to get reimbursed. And remember, it's not, when we submit the plan, it's about getting reimbursed on the invoices that are given to us. So if the classrooms are going to process $2,500 a piece and we get through them all, we'll be invoicing for a lesser amount. The other component of our implementation plan, number one, will be a physical security component. The classrooms in our school district, you cannot lock the classrooms in our school district from the inside. And this has been noted often, several times, amongst safety committee meetings. In any conversation about school safety, this conversation has come up numerous times, about the fact that if we're in a lockdown situation, one of the things that the person inside the classroom must do is, if the door is shut, open the door, jiggle the handle, make sure it's locked. If not, get the key, lock it, and then shut the door. So we were having a conversation with our local locksmith, the one that we have a contract with currently, about a better way to do this, and he was describing for us what they call a district-wide intruder core. The district-wide intruder core involves putting a lock on the inside of every door, not just classrooms, because it's not just the classroom spaces that we need to secure in a lockdown situation. It could be bathrooms, it could be main offices, it could be libraries, cafeteria doors, auditorium doors, any door in our buildings that someone could take refuge behind. We're looking to target to get an intruder core added to the lock set. So what it involves is actually changing out the handle set. Teachers, everyone in the buildings get to keep their existing keys, but it involves putting a new core on the inside of all the doors that allows any district key to lock that space. So, if as part of lockdown, you really notice that there are students or other persons in the hallways, and the closest door might be a bathroom. They can now go in, they'll be able to go in, shut the door, and lock that door behind them using their district-provided key. So no additional keys, and the management of that is not a problem. The function of the keys still works exactly the same. The doors will be poured on the outside to provide them just the access to those spaces that they need access to, but it's being able to lock any door in any building in our district using any district-provided key set. We believe that the committee agreed by consensus that this is a value add in terms of being able to have physical safety in our schools. We're budgeting $275 per door for the new handle set and cord, and we are planning on doing 2,000 doors in our district under this plan. So we're looking to spend, as part of this submittal, $1,450,000 out of $5,327,000. There is an allocation for private and parochial schools of $203,000. That is at a $250 per pupil rate multiplied by 812 students that are sent to our private and parochial schools in the 14-15 school year. We will continue the work of the Smart School Fund Act Committee and taking in recommendations from central office staff and the buildings alike on what to do with the remaining $3.6 million, but coming up with additional plans in the future through the work of the committee, collaborating with the private and parochial schools on spending their allocation as well. Their allocations are limited purely to instructional technology, not capital improvement, not software, not professional development. None of those things are included with this, only the hardware is done. Here's the breakdown of our 5 private and parochial schools and the dollar amounts that each will be receiving as part of this allocation. And I will entertain any questions.
Mr. Lumian?
How much money, it's nice to have a smart board and have all the technology in each classroom. It's important that teachers know how to use that particular technology. So how much are you putting into teacher training so that they can use the technology, which is available to them?
We're not allowed to provide professional development as part of the Smart School Fund Act money. But we are using standard software district-wide. We provide in-service classes. We provide training as needed. We can continue to use professional development opportunities like superintendent conference days and the like to talk about teaching strategies and pedagogy through the use and the use of instructional technology. And this is something that I think that we can maintain.
It's extremely important to me. I think a lot of teachers have smart boards in the classroom. I hate to say it, many don't know how to use it properly. So I think it's important that we provide the necessary training, because if they're trained properly, they'll use it.
Absolutely.
So since unfortunately it can't be used, I hope we have in-service courses so that the teachers can take advantage of the learnings in place so they can adopt their students. Thanks.
Agreed.
Oh, Mrs. Karan.
So to understand you about the displays or the interactive displays with use of the whiteboards, you are doing the 141 classrooms that don't have it available, and when you did the surveying, did you get a sense of those 141, were there in each a teacher that was wanting desperately to have that ability, or was it half of those? Just to follow up on Mr. Lumia, to explain more about what you found when you surveyed.
That's a good question and a fair question. I've never heard someone say, I don't want one. That's not true. Actually, I know one teacher who says he doesn't want one.
Mr. Kenny never wanted one.
What's that?
Mr. Kenny, I don't believe ever wanted one.
I know one person who got, we tried to put a trial in the classroom, and he said, please get this back here. So, you know what, in all fairness, the way this will work over the next 30 days is we're going to have vendors come in and show off their wares, and they're going to go classroom to classroom, survey the buildings. That's what they do as part of their implementation. They're going to identify technology. Some of it's not only going to be, projector. We're going to try and avoid projectors as much as possible. We're going to use display technologies that look more like a television. So large screen TVs, which are actually cheaper than the $4,500 that I quoted. They're more durable than projector-based technology, which have lamp hours of like 3,000 hours, and they burn out way too quick, and they're too costly to maintain. We're going to look to, speak with the teachers as we do the surveys and get some input. We're also going to have the teachers provide input on the technology that we select and say, well, we might for an art teacher, for example, might find more value in just simply the TV that gives me the display. You know, I don't care about the interactivity. I want to show the work of art. I want to show, you know, these great videos and things for my kids. Put it just a little to the left. Keep my primary writing surface the way it is, but I really would like that display technology to enhance my classroom, and that comes at a fraction of the cost. So something along those lines, and it will be differentiated.
Yeah, that sounds like an appropriate way to follow up with that initial plan. My only other question was, could you elaborate on the doors?
Sure, would you like to know?
Just basically, if you're going to approach 2,000, how did you decide to prioritize, just so that the public knows how you prioritize the type of doors? Was it classrooms first?
Yeah, I sat with Ron and the locksmith, and we came up with $2,000 at 2,000 doors as a reasonable number to start with. We believe that that'll cover obviously all the classroom doors and offices and restrooms and this and that. It might not be quite enough, depending on, every building's so different. You got these nooks and crannies that someone says, well, you know, someone might need to take cover in here, someone might need to take cover in there, and, you know, we might come back and have to amend the plan and add some doors to it. But the obvious ones would be the ones that are the low-hanging fruit that we choose to put the hardware in first.
Thank you.
Mrs. Pension.
I'm going to come back to the doors, and obviously safety is critical. I'd like to know how the actual interior lock works. My concern is children locking themselves in a bathroom, children locking themselves in a closet. How is it accessed? How is it unlocked? And
It's key driven only, so it's not going to be a deadbolt where you can turn. It's not going to be a thumb push button on the inside of a handle set. It's key driven, and that's why it's expensive. We're actually adding a whole other handle set and a core. Some districts are going to choose to put a push button on the inside of the handle. That lends itself to troubles that you're alluding to.
so, with it being key driven, how would that benefit the bathrooms? Because who's going to have the key?
That's a good question. It is part of the lockdown procedure for the schools to make note of anyone who might be in the hallway. They have assigned personnel who are close to bathrooms.
We can answer that in the next executive session.
They would get used.
They will get used.
Okay. I think Mrs. Hardeman was next.
Since we're on doors, I'll continue with that. The intruder cores that you're looking at, are they of the sort that once they are activated, the door handle is also locked from the inside? Because I know generally classroom doors, and most of the ones here, I believe, have the glass window. So once that's smashed, the intruder can reach through, and I know some of the cores do that and some don't.
We're not allowed to prevent the exit from a room. So, you know, that came up as part of the committee meeting discussion. It's a concern item. We're looking at armored film for glass as a possible thing to look into. We're going to be contacting vendors about that as well. I mean, it might be just something we bring forward and address later.
There are some simple solutions too that we can discuss in the next executive session.
Great. Yes, I mean, there's the physical pieces, and then there's the idea of someone putting the physical piece in place while someone left the room. So it's the same issues that Mrs. Bellman brought up, but we did talk about that.
And I know there are some issues with restrooms and student restrooms and locks, but I'm sure you'll look into that. My other question has to do with the interactive projection surfaces. Would that be an accurate way to describe them? Especially for the younger grades, are we looking at horizontal surfaces rather than vertical surfaces as a possibility?
I've seen some. You can. That would be a different proposal. You know, having interactive tables as part of the classroom experience. I personally haven't seen where they've gotten very popular. I think in certain special ed classrooms, in that the textile type interactivity of what those displays can, the manipulatives that you can just use to display with
with students who are 5 years old, physical access to the whiteboard to be able to interact and move things is sometimes difficult. I've had to use a stool.
They're typically mounted lower in the elementary school. That is true. They're typically, but as are the blackboards.
I've been fortunate enough to read in some kindergarten classes, Fishkill Elementary School, and I can tell you that they are mounted low, and the students do interact successfully.
Mr. Rubin.
Thank you. Most of the questions that I had to answer this one, I found this very informative. I had a couple of questions on the keys. How copyable are they by an individual? And who keeps the inventory on those keys? What happens? Keys may get lost from time to time, but somebody has to make sure those keys physically exist and they don't walk somewhere else, I would imagine.
The district actually has a locksmith and will be keeping the database. The issues of these keys, when they're issued, will be signed for.
So a teacher, as an example, sorry. A teacher, as an example, could not go just to even this one particular locksmith and get a key. That would have to go through the channels to get a replacement.
Correct. They'll need a security key, which do not duplicate ours. That would be considered a crime if somebody did duplicate the key.
Thank you.
Mrs. Laval.
Please use the microphone.
Microphone.
Are they limited to use in the lockdown situation, or you mentioned prohibit access or exit opportunity? So I'm thinking in terms of a fire. Are we limiting the use of these keys to the lockdown situation?
Yes, that's the primary purpose of it.
Okay, you already answered my first question, which was about the adapting the interactive technology to what's suitable for the different teachers, departments, age levels, etc. The doors, since they still have the windows, is there any way to, I speak as a former substitute teacher who found myself with a lockdown where nobody knew where there was something to put up, so I had to quickly look around and find something to put to block the window, and they at that school didn't give keys to the substitutes, so I shoved the teacher's desk against the door in case of, intruders. Are you going to make sure that the substitute teachers have the key for the day so that they will be able to lock the room in the case of a lockdown?
We'll look into that.
Okay, thank you, because that was a real concern. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Lopez.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good question. Good question.
The next presentation is the Building Conditions Survey.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Move this a little closer. My name is Philip Zemke. I'm an architect at Rhinebeck Architecture. We have had the privilege of doing the building conditions survey this year. Our agenda tonight is to give you a brief overview of the building conditions survey process, which is a construct developed by the New York State Education Department to help you manage and maintain your buildings. We'll talk about your district buildings and an overview in terms of the building types that you have, and then we'll talk about the building conditions survey findings for the building. And also we'll talk a little bit about other program needs that were discovered or that came up during the building conditions survey process, and then we'll talk about next steps. The building conditions survey process basically consists consists of a number of different activities. The first is the building condition survey. It focuses on safety and building maintenance. It's about your existing buildings, the systems in them, and how they perform. It's required every 5 years. You had to 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It's performed by a licensed architect and engineer. We're required to have the survey work done by November 15th of 2015. It provides the state education department with a 5-year spending fund. They collect these from every district in the state. They collect the findings and they look ahead to see what their funding or aid situation will be. It's also used by the district to plan the districts. You go through your buildings and make a series of recommendations. The district then gets to prioritize and decide how they want to spend the next 5 years improving the buildings. The data must also be reported to the state education department. It's uploaded to their computers. The original deadline is January 15, 2016. We will probably be extending that. They will be extending that. It's only because of the amount of data that every architect in the state will be uploading to the state site. The second part of the building condition survey is the 5-year capital facilities plan. The findings of the building condition survey are put into a 5-year plan, and sometimes even year 6 if there are things that aren't done in the 5 years. That 5-year plan helps the district plan building improvements over the next 5 years. The summary of that plan has to be submitted to the state education department with every project that we submit to them for approval. And then also this 5-year plan will be reviewed and updated by the computer. This is part of your other health and safety programs. You have a health and safety committee. There are annual fire inspections. You have your own district maintenance plan, and then you have school facility report cards that are supposed to be done annually that address school building conditions. The building condition survey method, basically we have a team of engineers and architects that review the buildings. The state education department provides us with a survey form that has 116 items on it. About 65 of them are about building systems. About, talk about that in further slides. We look at the existing, we basically do it on on-site observation. We look at your existing building documents. We look at previous reports. We look at the report from 5 years ago. We talk to the people that manage the buildings. We talk to the people that use the buildings. We try to gather as much input as we can from the people that use the buildings and take care of it. We review our findings with district personnel, and when we review, then the findings are reviewed by the district and once reviewed, the report of the state education. These are the types of building systems that we review: site, playground, and fields, roads, parking, sports facilities, foundations, building envelopes, interior spaces, plumbing, HVAC, electrical, fire safety systems, accessibility, the ability of your buildings to be accessible to the handicapped. Environmental comfort and health, things like air, moisture, humidity, dust, indoor air quality. What the survey doesn't require us to review is things like equipment, like stage equipment, kitchen equipment, food service equipment, chairs, seating, that sort of thing. It's basically about the building, the bones of the building, and the systems that allow that building to operate in an efficient manner. This is an important part. Out of the 65 systems categories that we reviewed, the state education department has labeled 35 of them as being significant for health and safety, pH, or structural with an S. The health and safety are typically the building environment, the structural are typically things like the roof, the windows, the building counter. Each system is rated by a team of architects and engineers. They're either excellent, satisfactory, unsatisfactory, non-functioning, or critical failure. The survey also wants to know when the last renovation was done. It wants to know the useful life of the old system. And then it wants to know cost for what we determine as a satisfactory system, and then cost shown for recommended improvement. As we're going through these buildings, we're not only noting whether the systems are working correctly, but we're noting other things. We're making recommended improvements that can help you maintain the building. So the health and safety and structural items are important. Let's talk about that. Because each building receives an overall building rating. And if everything is brand new, like your new transportation building, you would rate that building excellent. Though because it's new, it doesn't have to be part of the survey. Satisfactory are
satisfactory or better. Unsatisfactory, this is the important part, any system is categorized as, any system rated as health, safety, or structural is categorized as non-functioning or critical failure. Oh, I'm sorry, any system categorized as health, safety, or structural is rated unsatisfactory. And the unsatisfactory definition includes the end of its useful life. So a system might be working well, it might be functioning properly, it might be maintained properly, but if it's over 40 years old, it's getting towards the end of its useful life. I'll put that a little bit further. 5-year capital plan, a little bit better definition of that. It organizes and prioritizes your building needs on a district-wide basis for years 2016 to 2020. It's based on the data we collect from the building condition survey and the additional data that the district focuses on resolving safety and maintenance issues. It also establishes goals and budgets for the district's improvement priorities. The district also has educational needs, program needs, and that is also rolled into your 5-year plan. The governing regulations, of course, the state law, the commission's regulations, 155.1, 155.3. Now, your buildings are in a safe condition. They receive fire inspections every year. They are maintained well. The issues that we're finding is basically age. There are some systems in the building that have unsatisfactory rating, which make your building unsatisfactory. That is by no means to say that your buildings are unsafe in any way. It's just that they're getting old and they're no longer meeting the requirements that the state education department sets up for building school buildings. The oldest building in your district was built in 1940. This one is 75 years old. I'm sorry, Fishkill Elementary, 1910. This one was built in 1940, 75 years old. 12 of your 14 buildings were built in the same time period. They were built between 1952 and 1967. They're getting close to 50 years old. The school buildings at that time period were noted for having simple architectural forms, masonry walls, low slope roofs, vinyl asbestos flooring, such as we have here, concealed spline ceilings, the ceilings that are very hard to take apart and maintain. Fairly simple HVAC system where these classrooms had unit ventilators and then there was a central exhaust system, mostly through the corridors and out through the roof. And then the offices used for air supply, windows. You open a window and that would be your air supply. All of those buildings, that's why a lot of your buildings look the same, but they served your buildings well. They were well built, they were simple to maintain, they were kept well, but they're all reaching the end of their useful life and almost at the same time. Another issue in the district, in 1991 there was the Americans with Disability Act passed by Congress to require that all public buildings be modified to allow access for the handicapped. The state education department survey program asks questions, or yes or no questions. Is this building or any building in the survey accessible to the handicapped from the exterior? And there's a series of elements such as parking, ramps, and doorway access and getting into the building. It's a yes or no question. It's also one of those questions that's labeled H. The second question is, can someone who is handicapped maneuver through your building and get to all of the programs and functions and spaces that they need to in the building? Again, yes or no question, and that's labeled H as well. Right, and if that system is labeled as unsatisfactory, if you don't have access to the building because you don't have parking space or stairs or inside the building if there aren't accessible toilet rooms, if you have programs on second floors that have an elevator to get up there, that system is labeled H and that building is rated unsatisfactory. It doesn't make it any less safe, it just means that it is not fully accessible to the handicapped. These are the buildings we surveyed. There are 20 buildings in the district, 2 high schools, 2 junior highs, 10 elementary schools, and then 6 other buildings. The 3 modulars we looked at, 2 bus garages at this site, and then the facilities and operations building. This is a quick overview of the buildings. There's additional data that has all the numbers and items, but this is just a general overview of each of the buildings and where they are in terms of building condition survey. high school, rating satisfactory. Those are the basic values of the different categories. The overall site, the biggest issue is paving. Interiors, vinyl asbestos flooring. We provided a price to replace all of the vinyl asbestos flooring, even though some of the vinyl asbestos flooring is still sound, some of it's coming up, and so but that number represents taking all of them. HVAC, which I think is some of the larger problems in the district, air handling equipment and controls are reaching the end of their useful life. The controls need to be upgraded to a building management system. Electrical panels are still the original panels. Fire safety systems, the fire safety systems are currently functioning, they're inspected every year. They need to be upgraded to the standard standard. Accessibility in this building is good, it's elevated. Program improvements. While we were doing this, there was an initiative from the athletic directors and from the arts and music departments for program improvements. So we incorporated them into the building condition surveys and to incorporate them into the 5-year plan as the district determines our priorities. So that's that number down below. There's not a lot of detail on that at this point. Yes.
But the program improvements are being taken care of with the capital improvement project, are we not?
They're not currently being taken.
Well, what exactly is the program improvement? What program is that to be improved in that?
Well, for example, the sports fields need addressing. And there's improvements that the music and art department would like to see on the Memorial Arts.
Is it possible to actually have a listing of all, I'm sure it's going to be the same for every school.
You have
program
that.
improvement.
Yeah,
I would like to see a listing of actually what is and what needs to be improved. It's supposed to say program improvements.
Yes, that information.
You have
is
that.
available.
You do?
Yes. The other piece that, and it will be made public after today's meeting, the other piece that I'd like to share, just quickly if I may, Phil, is that when you look at the proposed program improvements, we are not talking about the condition survey. We're not talking about the 5-year building condition survey. What we're talking about are other items that the community has clearly expressed in terms of wanting to upgrade our facilities from a programmatic perspective. So we've heard many students talk about in turf fields, we've heard many students talk about upgrading our auditorium for the fine and performing arts. When we look at students, we want to look at all of our students, and how do we then look at a proposed program improvement is based on looking at all of our students, not just focusing on athletics, but focusing on other areas that many of our students also are very interested in participating. That is in complete isolation to the, or for the majority, isolation to the 5-year building condition survey. However, it is important to show simultaneously, as we heard from a community member earlier, that it is important to show basically all the steps that we are looking at and all the finances that we're facing as a school district, so that the board can then act responsibly in a matter of timelines to decide what it is and how we're going to move forward. So if Mr. Zemke can just continue to show the other schools, because it follows that same format, that would be great.
John Jay High School has a little bit more need of site paving the roads and parking, and desperate need of help. The building envelope, that roof is out of its warranty and getting old. The windows are also original to the building. Interior is vinyl stainless flooring. HVAC system, again, air handling equipment and controls. Program improvements, again, talking about the athletic fields, performing arts, and
Were the windows replaced at John Jay High School?
we did the cafeteria.
Just a cafeteria.
The rest of the buildings. Then right here, there's a lot of work done over some of the current capital projects. So the need here is like, again, vinyl asbestos tile flooring is an ongoing issue. Air handling equipment is starting to get it. This is one of the first buildings that's rated unsatisfactory. The air handling equipment, a portion of it is no longer working correctly. It's not the right air to the building. And again, this is one of the older buildings that's got one of the more antiquated HVAC systems. So that red that you see is the unsatisfactory system that's contributing to the unsatisfactory grading for the building. And also accessibility. It does not have an elevator. The cafeteria, science room, and library is on the second floor, inaccessible to someone who's mobility. So that's why that building has an unsatisfactory.
Just by your curiosity, I realize there's no elevator there, but it seems to me if a student is handicapped, could the program move to, let's say, to the first floor?
In some
At the same time, I realize you're coming to some stairs. Could the same thing be done, provide some space so that these handicapped students can, in fact, eat in perhaps a separate location that's called the student toilet?
If I can just say quickly also, I think it's a major difference when you're looking at a school building that the cafeteria, the library, it's all on the second floor. So you're really depriving students or depriving people that do not have the ability to have those opportunities.
So my question is, can the library be placed, let's say, at the first floor as well as the cafeteria at the first floor?
I think it'd be more expensive to do all the cafeteria than to actually add an elevator.
Plus your science labs are also, so that would be
That's fine.
more.
I assume those then, okay.
Brinkerhoff building is in pretty good shape. The windows are original, the floors are original, and then there's some air handling equipment that's original. In these, where you see the smaller proposed program, those are generally about security systems in the station. Second building that's rated unsatisfactory is Fishkill Elementary School, and that's because there are no toilet rooms that are fully handicap accessible. So that gives that entire building unsatisfactory.
Wouldn't they also need additional elevator, or because of the cafeteria that's on the first floor, they don't need an elevator? That's a multi-level.
It is, part of it is multi-level, but that's one building where you can take a program. Like if you had someone who was handicapped in a grade that's situated in a three-story building, that year you can take that program to the first floor.
Well, because the new art room is down here, there's no basement, right? So, is there, do we need to have accommodations there or not really?
Well, ideally you should, or you move the art program upstairs.
You can, that you can move that class. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a, yes, the art room has features in it, but I think that program can be moved year to year, and they do move around year to year. Fishkill Plains, again, air handling equipment in that building, the roof is at the end of its useful life. Toilet rooms are not fully accessible. There's a lot of toilet rooms throughout the district that have grab bars, but they don't have a new room, the door's not wide enough. When they built your elementary schools, the game toilet was all built in a template that used 32-inch doors for those toilet rooms. And then you have a frame so that you have an opening that's less than the required opening for handicap accessibility. You need a 36-inch door to get someone in a wheelchair through there. So a lot of those rooms just are not usable for handicap accessibility. Dayhead, another one that's unsatisfactory. This has multiple levels, no elevator, and lack of toilet. Plus, once you make those levels accessible, ADA requires that you have a handicap toilet room for each sex on each floor or each level. So if you provide access to the second floor, then you're also renovating those spaces to provide toilets. James Edna's unsatisfactory. The roof is at the end of its useful life, and it is approaching failure. And we're looking to draw to get plans up there to be as fast as we can so we can do that work this summer. And then also, this is a multi-level building, it's got 2 levels, functions on most of the levels. Mostly classrooms on the second floor, so you don't have to provide access there to move the functions around, but the gym and a number of spaces along the lower level. So that would require an elevator to provide access. Henry Road is in pretty good shape. This is a second-story building, a 2-story building where there's just classrooms on the second floor. There's not accessibility to the second floor, but again, a new program is going to avoid having to put in an elevator. There, the roof and windows are an issue. The paving is a major issue. That's problematic building in that there are a number of things that need work there. Paving and drainage for the building, the windows are original, vinyl tiles are original, the air handling equipment, the fence is very useful life. This one does not have an elevator nor a toilet on the second floor. Oak Road is satisfactory. Again, similar issues, paving, VAP floors, HVAC system. Sheep Road, unsatisfactory, toilet rooms. Toilet rooms not really accessible. Again, the same issues, paving, windows, vinyl tile, air handling equipment are approaching the end of their useful life. Vassar is unsatisfactory for the same reason. Toilet rooms are not fully accessible. Air handling equipment at the end of its useful life. Vinyl asbestos floors. The other buildings that you have, we looked at, Fishkill modulars. The Fishkill modulars are in okay shape. There's some modest cost to improve them. The other two buildings, we're talking to the district about removing them, so the cost you see there is the cost to remove. There's also been discussion of recovering some of that cost at auction.
Is that able?
No, I spoke with the state ed about that project, and at that time, removal would not be able.
At one time, I thought they told us that would be able, correct?
If you were going to add an addition on and replace it with an addition, that would be able. But just to remove them, they said that they would not be able.
The facilities building is not accessible, so that makes it unsatisfactory. Rating in the bus garage for the transportation offices on this site is not half fully accessible, so I wish that. Unsatisfactory. And then they have a number of other issues. In the facilities building, there's some site work, requirement for salt sheds, and retaining wall fences. Second bus garage 2 is the satisfactory condition. That's the maintenance building, and that cost is basically the cost to finish up the rest of the site work. We did a lot of the transportation work, but we didn't quite finish all of the paving around that building.
So those two are located, where's bus garage 2 located?
They're both right here.
They're both here?
Yes.
Okay.
Bus garage 1 is the smaller building where the offices are. Bus garage 2 is the larger one where the
Okay, that's not the new one.
This removal of the modulars, are they going to have to bid, or is it something you estimated to was going to cost?
We estimated that cost based on the cost to remove them and to, those things are securely connected to a foundation, concrete foundation, and they're connected to.
And Fishkill, they're secure, I don't think that Fishkill, there's no foundation there.
The other piece
Fishkill
too,
modulars, it says.
we've had, if I can just say in terms of the rating, you can only have unsatisfactory or satisfactory. In terms of the rating, which you see Fishkill, Van Wyck, and Gayhead, but Van Wyck and Gayhead, they're nowhere near the conditions that the Fishkill modulars are
Actually,
in.
Van Wyck
Say that, Ron?
That Van Wyck modular should be an unsatisfactory. That was an error.
So the Van Wyck modulars should be an unsatisfactory at this time as well, and that's an error in that report.
Yes.
Again, and Fishkill modulars, the $39,000 going to be to what? To replace, to put in force?
No, to replace the vinyl, that has vinyl composition tile floors, but they're again wearing out, so they need to be replaced. If you're going to keep that.
Which handrails are you talking about? There's handrails there now.
There are stairs with handrails that are flat as part of the guardrail, but there is no handrail that meets ADA requirements for a ramp or a stair. It has to be fully graspable, which is typically an 1.5 inch diameter rail.
What's a wood frame? Explain to me the wood frame again.
The wood frame under the buildings? The buildings have a wood frame that they're built on, and that is starting to deteriorate.
Did we at one time, we're going to replace, get rid of those modules altogether or not?
Right, but what we're saying is that in terms of if you're going to look at it at some point, what's repairable,
or salvageable,
Right, if you were
you're
gonna-
looking at fish scales.
If you were gonna
In
keep
terms
this-
of the other two, as Ben White is an error, it should be a U. In terms of Gay Head as well, Ron,
Gay should also be a
Ron
U.
should also be a U. So in terms of looking at these items, what we're saying is, not what we're saying, what the report is indicating though, is exactly that.
I mean, again, this is just estimate cost. If we decide to bid this out, the board, decides to bid this out, we can put that cost of the removal of to the successful bidder. We could disconnect the power, and then it would be up to him to put the wheels back on, because the axles are actually underneath the facility there. So they could just come in with the tires, pump them up. There you go.
Just one more comment.
Yes.
Most of the buildings, with the exception of Evans, where the roof has to be replaced, they consider unsatisfactory simply because of handicap accessibility, correct?
Yes, with the exception of this building, which has a HVAC, portion of the HVAC system.
But the majority are considered unsatisfactory because of lack
Handicap.
handicap accessibility. So
Correct.
it's not something that all of a sudden we have 10 schools, whatever schools there are, considered unsatisfactory. Those are things that basically the government has asked us since 1991, I think you said, that we have to address.
We just,
And I think that the Capital Improvement Committee will prioritize those particular needs, and then the board is to address those needs.
I just want to put out there, I mean, if somebody looks back 5 years ago and they see all these buildings are satisfactory, that was incorrect back then. You go by the guideline that the state requires the architect to do, it requires the building to be unsatisfactory due to handicap accessibility.
Yeah, it's a yes or no question. Are they accessible? Yes.
That $45,000 for each of those modules, though, that's just, from a trustee perspective, I think that's an incomplete figure, because that's the cost you're saying to remove the module, but it's not, doesn't include any cost in terms of getting that ground back to an area. So, all of the ground is left there, I guess, at some point.
Well,
The modules are taken, and then
the ground is level. There is a foundation storage, whether it's stacked block or concrete pier that has to be removed, and the ground needs to be tilled and seeded. Yes.
there will be subsequent site re-preparation, I guess you might call it. Thank you.
Again, that was just an estimated figure.
Right.
I feel we can do that much cheaper rate.
These are budgets.
Do you want me to speak?
Hi. The question I have is that you're saying some of the oldest school building in the district was built in 1910. Now, we know that any building which was built before 1978 is likely to have this lead-based paint. So, do we have any kind of internal system in place to check for the lead levels? Because the kids can get exposed to lead level, and that's the thing which we...
If we have any peeling of paint, or we're about ready to spray some paint, Quest Environmental comes in with an x-ray machine, and they actually x-ray it on the spot, and they can tell us if it's a lead based. So before we do construction like that, we do test that.
And the same thing with radon and all those things, assistant and radon.
Okay.
When we submit a project to SED for approval of construction plan specs, by the time you do that, the building sites have to be tested for asbestos, lead, PCB, any other hazardous material. So all of the places where we work, all checked.
Yeah, I think lead is the only one which you check if the building is old, like built before 1978 or something.
It's actually, it's done every time.
Yeah.
It's done every time the contractor comes in, because you don't know if someone's,
Yeah.
done some painting, or if someone brought in an item,
Yeah.
and someone brings in a piece of historical. So district-wide, these are the survey photos.
Excuse me, we have another question. Mrs. Laval?
I don't know if I'm getting ahead of you. What are the consequences for the unsatisfactory conditions, and how, how long do we have to cure it? What are the, you know, what are the consequences of the situation that we're in?
Well, the unsatisfactory, state education department would prefer that the district handle and take care of the unsatisfactory systems that make the building rated unsatisfactory. So there is a push from SED to correct it. When you do that 5-year capital plan, and I do a 5-year capital plan for you, we work out what your plans are for each building. We have to cite the fact that the building condition survey found these systems unsatisfactory and where the health and safety of structural systems. And by rights, that particular portion of the 5-year plan should say how the district is going to address it. And there should be a solution for those things in that 5-year plan. And then that 5-year plan, you can decide that you want to do things in-house, do it next year, or you can do a capital project and do it over 3 years, or you can defer it to year 4 or 5. You know, but as long as you put it into a plan, you can show that you have good intent to solve the problem.
I went to a seminar, just to give you some information, past week, and they did state, please, or move forward, not that we would, but they're gonna pull this building condition survey and say, no, you're not, you're gonna address these issues. So if we decide to address some issues that are not in the building condition survey, they're gonna question us and say, no, you have these handicap issues, you have these other issues, we need you to address these first.
We have 5 years to address all those unsatisfactory things. We have 5 years, correct?
I don't know what the time limit is.
Well, that's a question I think Ms. LaValle asked.
You should be addressing them within this 5-year time frame.
Address fix or address it?
You should have a plan to turn your buildings into a satisfactory rating over the next 5 years. That should be the district's goal.
I think it's,
I was just going to say, in that case, we have listed here construction costs and program improvements. In other words, they would not approve program improvements until we took care of the unsatisfactory items. Is that correct?
Right, or if you included them in that same submission.
Thank you.
Just a FYI, you have to do a building project within your building in order to get aid on some of your athletic fields. Otherwise, you would not get the aid for your athletics.
Thank you. Mr. Carrion, did you have a question?
I'll wait.
All right, so district-wide, this is the district-wide picture, and you can see, you know, sort of categories where the big exposures are. Again, the site is mostly paving and roads. Building envelope is roofs, windows, some brickwork. Interiors is primarily the vinyl asbestos tile floors. In some of your school buildings, it's sound. In some of your school buildings, usually the ones that have a western exposure, the tile is usually popping. But where the tile is sound, it's not, there's no immediate call to address it. It's still sound, it's not causing impact. HVAC, you can see, is one of your biggest issues. In the red, the building envelope is the Evans roof. The red for the HVAC is this building's mechanical system. And then you can see the accessibility issue, and you can see the relative value of them. I apologize, the graphics aren't as good as they should be, but this gives you a general overview of where your exposures are. The total construction costs for the improvements that we included in the building condition survey are about $63 million. The proposed program costs that we know about, talking to various groups, is about 9.6. Gives you a total construction cost of 73. If you were going to do the entire project at once, which is not something that is expected, you would want to add the cost for the district to do the project. Those are called incidental costs. They cover the cost of design, engineering, testing, legal, insurance, public works, other expenses that the district has. That's at 14. So if you're going to do a complete project through all of this work, you're looking at about 87 million. This is a brief description of the program improvements. Sports program improvements at John Jay and Carson Ketchum High School, Dr. Junior High School. And again, the fields, dressing up the field, improving the field, doing some work on the press box, the John Jay press box with Carson Ketchum is already under design, and actually it's up at SUV waiting for approval. And Bob Junior's here discussion on tennis court. These are all things that the district needs to talk about further in the art and drama improvements at the high schools and junior high schools consist of auditorium improvements, seating, brightening it up a little bit, equipment for music, equipment for video production, that sort of thing. Two of the improvements, the site, the parking and drop-off improvements. Parking at Waffen's Junior, we did most of the site, but we didn't finish the pavement circle on the sideways and and the Kimby Road elements, we're trying to improve that parent drop-off situation. And the district-wide stage curtains and interior security system.
Excuse me, we were just talking with the Smart Bond Act about the interior security system. Could those things be funded under the Smart Bond Center?
We're working with Darren on all this. I'm sorry. We're working with Darren and seeing what pieces can be pulled out of it and added to the smart bond. And we are working together.
Thank you.
So the idea is to actually present once again to the board indicating timelines, making a recommendation, as well as what Mr. Lokema will continue to work on, which is developing some matrix that he'll work closely along with not just Mr. Bross, but with Ms. Crandall, to really look at what the recommendation that we would make, look at what we normally would do sometimes out of our general fund, look at what we would do in terms of our reserves at this point, our smart bonds, capital improvement, and sometimes, which you know, we get donations as well. And all of those items, we would add it all up together to kind of really show, to make life easy right now, if we're talking $50 million, that, let's not, Mr. Looney is making a face, so let's just say, if we're talking $30 million, that possibly what we're looking in terms of capital improvement is just maybe $18 million, because out of all these other designated items, this is how we have reduced that cost for the first set of plans. I also want to take this opportunity to really thank Mr. Zemke. He did a phenomenal job, and his attention to detail and just really meeting with us countless times. I mean, I've seen these spreadsheets over and over again, but Mr. Bross mentioned quickly that 5 years ago, we don't understand why everything was listed as satisfactory, something that we inherited as the former condition survey. And it was a conversation that I'm going to share to say, well, is this somewhat subjective? Can you put satisfactory on some of these items? And Mr. Zemke, not only because of his integrity, but as well understanding the rules, no, they need to be listed as unsatisfactory. So the question lies, how come 5 years ago this happened? And so we're not looking at a building condition survey that's brand new. We're looking at a continued building condition survey that went with satisfactory, that did not provide 5 years of planning to really address that law from 1991 in terms of the ADA. And as we move forward, one of the things, do you have the next page there?
This is the last.
Okay, so as we move forward, one of the things that we will present to the board at our next meeting is to really indicate what must we do. And a lot of it from a cultural perspective is really talking about that ADA perspective. Looking at providing all of our students in our community with accessibility. So therefore, the preliminary work that the entire senior team has done, Mr. Zip, Dr. Cardwell, along with the 3 people that I just mentioned, and Dr. Bonk, we're basically really saying, well, what do we believe in? And of course, we want to make sure that there's accessibility for all of our students. And then, of course, we also have to address some of the things that are in dire need of taking care of. I'll end with this, that when I first started and I did in this district and I did my first tour, one of the things that's completely obvious is that
the physical structures, the outdoors of buildings, the curb appeal has gone ignored for many, 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 many years. I mean, it's just obvious. And I can say that Mr. Bross, with this capital improvement project and the work that he's done, we've seen some remarkable improvements. But when you ignore a physical structure for many, 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 many years, then this is what you start facing as well.
Mr. Rubin.
Thank you. Mr. Carrion, I will tell you that I'm very impressed with the information that we've been given both here and in previous meetings. It came to as a thought afterwards when you talk about, as an example, HVAC, or when you talk about improvements, upgrading. Are we looking at alternative energy sources in any of this? Does this have anything to do with heating the building, where we could maybe look at other types of sources other than oil and natural gas, or no, we're staying within the traditional types of thinking in that respect?
All your buildings are now capable of burning both natural gas and fuel oil.
Well, years
Something
ago,
about like going green.
well, I don't know what green means anymore, okay? But as an example, geothermal had been, that's a term, I know we've discussed it, it's really been pushed back, but geothermal heats, as I understand it, water's pumped into the earth, and then the earth heats it to 55 degrees, and then you can take that as a starting point for, say, heating water, heating your buildings, etc. So I'm asking if alternative types of systems have been thought about here, or is it traditional oil or gas?
Again, this is just very preliminary stages right now, so we haven't looked that deep into all this.
Okay.
But we will when the project comes to start hopefully soon.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. And be quick. 5 years ago, a building plan was done, right? But things in 5 years have aged. 5 years ago, I don't think that the building on the roof at Evans was as bad as it is now.
Right.
5 years older. So 5 years ago, it might have been appropriate to have it satisfactory, where obviously now they're not. So time does age things, I assume. So obviously the other stuff, for example, accessibility, that has been an issue that's been talked about since I've been on the board. And obviously, it should be addressed. And so far as an answer to Mr. Rubin, I believe we are going to look at the Capital Improvement Committee next in the next session regarding alternative source of energy. So that's something that has got nothing to do with the building survey, I don't believe. That's another topic.
Last slide. So the next steps for my firm is to, once the district authorizes, we would report the building condition survey data to SCD. Meantime, the district needs to be determining its goals for the next 5 years. There's a number of initiatives that I think are ongoing and will be ongoing, coming to conclusion at some point. And then finalizing the 5-year plan. Once the district has done its work and set its priorities, we will take those priorities and prepare a 5-year plan that will illustrate for the district and for the state education department what we intend to do over the next 5 years for building.
As part of the Capital Improvement Committee, I think it's important that you prioritize 1, 2, 3, so that the committee knows exactly what is a priority that must be addressed within.
Yes, we've done that with our data that we reported, the minute data.
Right.
And now the district is reviewing that as well. And
Well,
basically,
I think the Capital Improvement Committee should read that, not just
We definitely will bring it to
the
the
capital.
I mean, and that's a process that we,
Yeah, ultimately, I see some clickers coming on because the board will decide.
Mr. Rubin.
Excuse me. Does the state education department have any guidelines or requirements as to elevators used within a building? Dee Dee Barrett, Assemblywoman Dee Dee Barrett, in her Poughkeepsie office, she's on the first floor, but the parking lot is lower. So it's not an enclosed elevator, but you get on this platform, and It's exterior, not enclosed at all, and the platform raises. I was at a train station in Montreal, and they have, this is interior, but they have something similar where it's just a platform that raises or lowers. So do we have, is it standards, does it have to be enclosed over there?
I actually installed one in my previous district, and it did need that. As far as a stair lift or something like that.
Just a platform.
Yep, it was just a platform, they got in, the door shut, and I lifted it on to the next level.
You can
It
use
was
them.
just a door where they would back out.
Right, they're called wheelchair lifts, and state building code allows you to use them between levels within a space. Like you could use a wheelchair lift here, but if you need to go from a floor to a floor, you need an enclosure, and that's why we typically want an elevator, regulated by elevator. So there's a level, you can use a wheelchair lift for halfway, up to half, or three-quarters of the way, all the way.
That's what we installed in our previous district, like 4 steps up, and then just like, platform.
So we need to talk about handicap accessible. Do the stages in all the buildings have to be handicap accessible?
That's in the report.
Yeah, these stages throughout the district should be accessible to the handicap, and that's where you can use a chair lift. You can also schedule a program on the floor in front of the stage, so it's not, again, the whole point of the ADA is to allow people with handicaps to become part of the Main Street. So anything that isn't Main Street is looked at as restricted. Thank you. Any other questions?
Excellent.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. An excellent presentation and a lot of work. This brings us to the consent agenda. We'll try to finish up. My goal has been to finish the meetings by 9:30, and pretty much we've been doing that recently, but we had a great deal to cover tonight. All right, the consent agenda. Is there anyone who would like to remove anything from the consent agenda? All right.
Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby approve the following consent agenda items as stated. 7.02, 7.03, 7.04, 7.05, 7.06, 7.07, 7.08, 7.09, 7.10, 7.11, 7.12, 7.13, 7.14, 7.15, 7.16, 7.17, 7.18, 7.19, and 7.20.
So moved.
Mr. Rubin moved, Mr. Lumia seconded. All in favor? Unanimous. New business.
8.01, approval of agreement with East Fishkill Police Department and Fishkill Plains and Gatehead Elementary Schools. Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby approve the agreement between the Wappinger Central School District and the East Fishkill Police Department to present the Drug and Violence Prevention Program to the 5th grade students of the Fishkill Plains and Gatehead Elementary Schools.
Just a little point, yes, move second. Okay, again, Mr. Rubin moved, Mr. Lumia seconded. Just a point of information, this East Fishkill Police Department received a grant, and so that's why it's for these two specific schools only, because those are the schools within their area. All those in favor? Unanimous.
8.02, acknowledge receipt of October 2015 financial reports. Resolved, the Board of Education does hereby acknowledge receipt of the October 2015 financial reports as stated.
Motion?
Motion. Good second.
And
We have
do
to
we,
vote.
all right, just to acknowledge it. Do we need a motion to acknowledge it, Mrs. Pedro? Yes, we need a motion. Yes. All right. Did you want to make the motion, Mr. Rubin? Thank you. And Mr. Lumia seconds. All those in favor? Unanimous? Thank you. All right. Requests for additions to the agenda. Are there any requests? No? All right, it is time for communications from the public. 30 minutes are allotted. At this time, members of the public may speak on any subject that they wish, so long as it does not involve individual persons. All right, is there anyone who wishes to speak?
And slow shower again, East Fishkill. Where is the update on Orchard View? The board and the community were to receive a quarterly update as to the progress of the new school and charter. What is the total enrollment of the school? Are 68 students active? Did all students, either new or returning, complete an application for the program along with their written essay under the new charter? What is the breakdown by class? What is the attendance record for the students in the program? This is some of the information that was to be reported. What is the status of the Legislative Action Committee? One of your board goals was to thoroughly understand the understanding of federal, state, and local mandates. I had asked for 2 years that this committee be formed to fight unfunded mandates that are crippling this district. We have 103 of them. This district has been shortchanged roughly $28 million because of the gap elimination by New York State. Madam President, you brought this to a vote at the organizational meeting in July, and it was passed by this board. I provided the committee with a charter outline, yet as of today, 6 months later, not one meeting has been held. Mr. Lumia resigned as chairman of this committee, yet there has been no vote to replace him. Why? Why hasn't this committee been properly formed? The taxpayers of this district continue to be taken advantage of. We need to fight back as a community. This committee will start that fight along with help from our local politicians. Another part of your board goals was to show the effect that continual rentals will have on the capital project, real cost, and the yearly budget. Is it the plan of this board to once again place on the May 16th ballot a referendum to approve the purchase of district offices and Orchard View? These leases end in June of 2016. There is a 2% increase starting in July 17 and again in July 2018. We cannot afford these increases if we are going to bond our current capital improvement project as well as a potential new capital improvement project without raising taxes or major cuts to student programs. Neither of these are an option. We also must give 4 months' notice if we decide to renew the leases. Is it the board's intention to revisit the closing of Vassar and moving district offices and Orchard View there? This does not leave us a lot of time to game plan. We need a plan for this coming May regarding a potential vote. In January and February of 2016, I would like to see how the board is going to instruct the superintendent moving forward on these issues. I continue to be extremely concerned about the rights of our students being violated in this district, as well as the attempted ridiculous restrictions put on them as well. I do not believe this board, for the most part, or at least a good majority of this board, does not have any idea what is going on in the schools or in the classrooms. In my opinion, you do not properly communicate with the students on all grade levels to really understand what they go through on a daily basis. Strategic planning to have any chance of working or for the success of this district in educating our children, this must start with the board. That's you, ladies and gentlemen. With that being said, I respectfully ask that you consider the following when you return in January. A 10th non-voting board seat to be created. This seat will have a student of this district at board meetings to represent all students, and all of them to have a choice in the shaping of this district. One from John Jay and one from R.C. Ketchum. They can rotate board meetings and work together with our remaining schools, principals and the PTAs, so that the board can hear and understand the issues facing our students on a daily basis and work together to address these concerns and help fix these problems. With that being said, I would like to wish everybody happy holidays and a happy and healthy new year for everyone in the district. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Do we have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Lumia and Mrs. Laval seconds. All those in favor? Unanimous.